The last week of summer is here already. I'm Jeff Wagner, in for Charlie Sykes. Sunday Insight starts right now. Good morning and welcome to Sunday Insight. In the week that was, think you had a bad week? Well, the hits just keep coming for disgraced Milwaukee Brewers slugger Ryan Braun. And I don't mean base hits. Thursday night, Braun issued a written apology for using performance-enhancing drugs. Earlier this week, a childhood friend of Braun's filed suit against him, alleging that Braun initially stiffed the guy on a $5,000 debt, then defamed him to mutual acquaintances. Other reports allege Braun tried to harm the reputation of the man who collected his initial urine sample by claiming the guy was anti-Semitic. On top of it, guess who's absent from this year's team picture? We'll talk about Braun a little bit later. Now, on the good news front, new numbers show that Wisconsin high school seniors finished second in the country when it comes to ACT test scores. Maybe staying home during those long Wisconsin winters is giving kids more time to study. Who needs global warming? And the Potawatomi tribe announced that gambling revenue had dropped $5 million from fiscal 2011 to fiscal 2012. In real numbers, though, it still means gamblers lost about $363 million last year. The moral of the story? You know those big fancy casinos in Vegas? They weren't built on money that gamblers won. First this morning, crime in Milwaukee continues to spiral out of control. You literally need a calculator to keep up with the number of shootings in the city this summer. Mayor Barrett now says he wants to fill over 100 vacancies at the Milwaukee Police Department and continues to push for $500,000 from the state to help fund police overtime. Meanwhile, many politicians and community leaders continue to deplore the violence but offer very little in the way of solutions. So, is the recent crime wave just a temporary aberration or a sign of a long-term failure of public policy? And does anybody really know what to do to save residents of crime-plagued areas of the city? Joining me on our panel this morning, the Milwaukee Community Journal's Michael Holt, State Representative Jim Ott, Milwaukee Alderman Bob Donovan, and State Representative Joe Sanfilippo. Okay, Bob Donovan, you had a walking tour of your district that was attended by politicians. The mayor was there. What's going on and what can be done?
Well, what's going on has been going on for quite some time. Some of us have been saying this literally for years, Jeff, that we need to take a more comprehensive approach, a more long-lasting approach to addressing the public safety concerns in Milwaukee. We're seeing, I believe, the fruits of our poor decision-making over the last 5 to 6 years.
Okay, give me one example.
One example, the police vacancies. And I know people will say we don't need more cops. That's hogwash. We do need more police officers to first stabilize and make safer our challenged neighborhoods. We talk about broken windows policing. That cannot be done without the boots on the street. I have pointed out for years, let's emulate what was accomplished in New York City under Rudy Giuliani and Bill Bratton, Commissioner Bratton. 20 years ago, they began the process of turning that city around. They went from 2,400 homicides a year down to this last year, a little over 400. The miracle of New York. We can do that here in Milwaukee.
Okay, Michael Holt, lots of areas of Milwaukee are very, very safe. Most of the crime is occurring in a handful of areas. Is more aggressive policing, is that the solution?
I don't think that's necessarily the long-term solution. You know, a few years ago, maybe a decade or so ago, remember they were actually stopping, frisking individuals. If you saw 3 black youths that were stopping in search of, you know, if you want to solve crime, unfortunately, you have to take away people's civil liberties at the same time. You know, I agree that we need more police officers on the street, but unless you also address poverty, you're not going to really solve this problem. Okay, and we have one of the most impoverished cities in the United States of America, 40% poverty rate.
Okay, you're the king. Give me one thing that's going to help address the poverty issue.
If they create some jobs or make the city more attractive to businesses to move in here.
Okay, creating jobs. Joe Sanfilippo, what, if any, is the state's role in this? I mean, Milwaukee is the largest city in the state. The state's success, I think, is tied to Milwaukee. How big a deal is this, and what can the states do?
Well, the state does have an important role, I think, to play here, especially considering that Milwaukee and in the greater Milwaukee area is the economic hub of the state, and this is where, you know, most of the population is concentrated. But the city can't mismanage things for years and then turn around and expect the state to come in and mop things up. I mean, if the state has to come in and run things on a local level, then why do we need local government? The state might as well just take over. I think that any long-term solution to help fixing the problem is going to take a lot of different pieces of the pie to come together. Number one, the judges have to start really sentencing people instead of letting criminals out of jails, and more intensive policing in areas. And then I think that, you know, we need to involve Sheriff Clark and get the Sheriff's Department involved, and maybe even the State Patrol in some areas too. This is a problem. It's a serious problem. It can be addressed.
Now, see, Jim Ott, what I'm hearing is a lot of reactive things. I mean, you know, the police, they react after there's a crime. Obviously, it's a better situation if people aren't out committing crimes with guns in the first place.
Well, and I agree with our other panelists. Certainly what New York City has done is an example, and you're reacting to the problem. Absolutely. More police on the street, I think that's a good thing. New York City did put in a mandatory 3.5 years sentence, minimum sentence for crimes committed with a gun. You know, they increased the sentence from what it used to be. But I think longer term, I'd like to see more effort at encouraging, like, teenagers not to have children out of wedlock. I think that really starts them and their families down the wrong path. Encouraging young people to stay in school and get that diploma. You go to an employer today, I don't care what job it is, and say, oh, I didn't graduate from high school. You're not going to go anywhere in the job market. So I'd like to see more efforts at longer term solutions. I don't think I see enough encouragement in that area right now.
Jim and Joe, you guys are in the state legislature. The mayor wants $500 grand from the state taxpayers to help pay police overtime. Is he going to get it?
I think that if he proposes a viable plan, we can't just throw money at the idea and think it's going to solve it. And I think the state will be willing to help out, but we have to see some plan, and we have to make sure that when these monies aren't going to be handed over from the state so that the city can just spend their money somewhere else.
Jim?
And even that's sort of a short-term solution, the overtime thing. I think if you're looking to increase police presence, I think you have to do something with more permanent police on the street. Whether that comes from the state or not, I'm not sure.
Okay, what has your glass half full and what has your glass half empty? Let's go around the table. We start with Michael Holt.
Well, this week marks the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington and Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech. We traveled a long way in terms of race relations in this country, but it's half full because we haven't traveled far enough.
Jim Ott.
The glass is half full, Jeff, because the Department of Transportation is working on a plan to widen I-43 all the way up to Grafton in Ozaukee County, a much needed project. It's half empty because, unfortunately, the work won't start till 2014, but it's a very complicated project. I think DOT is doing a good job.
Bob Donovan.
Well, I'm going to stick with Milwaukee. And again, I say it's half full because we've got such a great city. We've got Harley Fest coming in. We just had a great Irish Fest weekend, Mexican Fiesta this weekend. Half empty because we have neighborhoods facing serious challenges and the job just ain't getting done.
Joe Sanfilippo.
My glass is half empty because after 3 decades in multiple reports, mental health care is still suffering in Milwaukee County. My glass is half full, though, because Governor Walker and the Republicans in the legislature provided $29 million extra to go to mental health care. County Executive Abele has pledged to put another $4 million in his budget to go towards outsourcing mental health care, and the Speaker's task force is going to be coming out with some very actionable bills this fall that are really going to help improve service. So there is help on the way.
And my glass is half full because the Harley 105th starts this week. It's going to be great. It's half empty because we're going to have to wait another 5 years after it's over. Next on Sunday Insight, is 65 too slow on some Wisconsin highways? Is it time to raise the limit? Well, anybody who's ever driven on the freeway knows the story. You're driving along close to the posted speed limit, maybe a little bit above, and all of a sudden a convoy of cars blows by you going 20 miles over the limit, and they're making nasty gestures at you. Well, this week, believing that some speed limits may be too low, a state legislator proposed raising the limit on some roads from 65 to 70. This would bring our speed limit in line with several other Midwestern states. Surprisingly, at least to me, this suggestion has received a lukewarm reception. So, should we have to continue to drive 65? Jim Ott.
Well, you know, what's interesting, Jeff, back in the 1960s, the daytime speed limit on the interstate system was 70 miles per hour. And the fact that the speed limit came down had nothing to do with safety. It was all related to some of the gasoline shortages we faced back in the 70s. So the roads are designed for 70 miles per hour. And I certainly think that, you know, barring some unforeseen circumstances, I don't see any reason why the speed limit shouldn't be raised. I don't think it's going to have a big impact on a lot of people, except those who maybe drive long distances on the interstate. Plus, cars today are safer. More people wear their seat belts. So I guess I don't have a problem with it.
Michael Holt, you're a suburbs guy. You want to be able to drive faster to get home?
Well, it wouldn't help me with the little short distance I have to go. But I remember my last year in the military, I was stationed at Great Lakes, and I had a little Opel GT. I could get to Milwaukee in like 35 minutes. And let's be honest, nobody actually goes under the limit. We're always 8 to 9 miles per hour over the limit because we know that's after that, that's when the cops are going to actually pull you over.
Well, Bob Donovan, see, that's what I hear. Some people say, if the limit's 65 now, people are driving 80. You raise it to 70, people are going to drive 85 or 90. Is this a good idea?
Well, you know, I certainly don't have any problem with raising it to 70. To me, it makes sense, especially if it keeps us in line with surrounding states. So, but yeah, you're right. They're going to be 75 or 80 if it's raised to 70. But as I said, I think people are driving already at that rate. I certainly don't have an issue.
Joe Sanfilippo, it's interesting because the things I've seen since the proposal came out did suggest that this is sort of getting a lukewarm reception. That's how I described it. What is the politics of this? Is this going to happen, do you think?
I think it will. I mean, it's not a major deal. It makes sense, and I think that for some reason you have people apprehensive at first when you throw out an idea. But as Jim mentioned, this isn't something that's never been tried before. We were at higher speed limits all the way up until 1973, when the Carter administration's idea of dealing with a fuel shortage was just to have a slowdown on our cars. I mean, cars today are built for higher safety standards. You have more protections out there. That I think in the end, when people step back and calm down and see this isn't such a controversial issue, it'll get approved.
As far as I'm concerned, if it eases that mess around Bayshore Shopping Center that happens all the time, do it. Make it 4 lanes, make it 6 lanes, whatever. Okay, you may not want to hear it, but we're going to tell you anyways. That's what we do. Let's dish out some unsolicited advice. We start with Michael Holt.
Well, school starts for most students in a week or two. My advice to parents, don't complain about the results if you're not involved in the process. Become a partner in education.
Jim Ott.
Don't hit the accelerator just yet. Even though we're talking about raising that speed limit, I think we eventually will. It's probably not going to happen for a little while.
Bob Donovan.
My advice, Jeff, goes to the mayor, the common council, the governor, and the state legislature. Let's forget whatever partisanship exists, and let's find a way to partner together on improving Milwaukee, because if we're able to do that, the entire state wins.
How about that Donovan for mayor sign that I hear that's up there?
No comment on that. That's not one of the topics.
Okay, all right. Yeah. Just asking. Joe Sanfilippo.
My unsolicited advice goes to all the gangbangers and street thugs and criminals here that are trying to take down our city. Just take a look back at what the stories that we've seen over the early year. The gentleman who helped the robbery at Aldi's, Charlie Blackmore, who saved the woman from a vicious beating in West Dallas, and then just now the bar owner on Burnham Street. Thanks to concealed carry, your days of free reign and terror over innocent victims in this city are numbered, and I suggest you start getting a job and earning a decent, honest living.
Okay, here's my unsolicited advice. Army PFC, Bradley Manning, is getting ready to start a 35-year prison term for leaking confidential and secured information. He now says he wants to be called Chelsea, he wants to be treated like a woman while serving his prison sentence, and he wants taxpayer paid for hormone therapy. My unsolicited advice? I actually don't even know where to start on this one. Next on Sunday Insight, Too Little Too Late. What do you think of Ryan Braun's apology for using performance-enhancing drugs and lying about it? Well, almost a month after being suspended for the balance of the 2013 baseball season, Ryan Braun has finally spoken, sort of. In a series of written statements, Braun has acknowledged that he used products to help him deal with nagging injuries. He added he was ashamed that he compounded the situation by not admitting his mistakes immediately. You think? Thus far, Braun has not answered questions from the media and has not indicated what the products he took were. So is this a good first step? And if so, what does Braun need to do next? On the other hand, is this way too little, way too late? Michael Holt.
No, I think it was a positive step forward, but he really needs to, and this is some unsolicited advice, to speak to the public in person and acknowledge what he did in the past. But again, next season, if he hits home runs, you're going to hear the fans cheering just like I will.
Do you agree with that? I mean, can he get his reputation back?
I think it's certainly a possibility, and you're asking the wrong guy. I'm a fair weather baseball fan. If they're winning, great, I follow them. If they don't, the hell with them. But having said that, I do think he needs to come out publicly and talk to the people.
Bob, if you do run for mayor, we need to have a couple conversations about stuff. That's it. Just a little bit of advice there. Jim Ott.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Jeff, the amazing thing today in the world of sports and also in the world of entertainment to an extent, it's amazing what activities can be forgiven if you come out and perform. So a lot is going to depend upon how Ryan Braun does on the baseball field next year as far as people's perception. That'll help, but I don't think too many people are impressed with these statements that come out that were probably maybe written by somebody else, right. And the sincerity seems to be lacking, and plus it seems like he gets into a bigger and bigger problem as time goes on, so he's got to turn things around.
Joe?
Yeah, I think Ryan is kind of caught up in a little Watergate situation here. You know, it's not the crime itself, it's the cover-up. And people are willing to forgive you if you make a mistake and you own up to it and you say, I screwed up and I'm sorry. But because he lied and he covered up, people feel betrayed. And I think that fans are just taking this really personally. And especially, Ryan maybe more so than any other player because he always was looked up to as this, great All-American kid who everybody really loved and cherished. And, can he recover? Yeah, but I think it's going to take a long, long time, and it may not end up with him recovering here in Milwaukee.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you. I think this is one of those situations where it really is, it's the cover-up. Okay, he cheated, fine, that happens, but it's all the other stuff. It's that press conference where you'll just look and you lie to people's faces. Maybe this is a good step, but I think he's got a long way to go. Okay, is what they said this week what you heard? Let's go around the table. We start with Michael Holt.
Well, the county exec said he wants a compromise on the deal worked out for the art museum to fund it for the next 20, 30 years. What I heard was, I'm finally going to lose one of these issues.
Jim Ott.
What the Wall Street Journal headline said was, UPS tightens health benefits. What I heard was, Obamacare strikes again.
Bob Donovan.
Well, the mayor came out and said he wants to hire 100 cops for next year. Okay, that's wonderful. It's just a drop in the bucket because what I actually heard and no one was saying is over the next couple of years, we're going to have 300 cops eligible to retire. These 100 cops aren't even going to fill those vacancies.
Joe Sanfilippo.
What I hear the critics continue to say about Governor Walker's plan to move those over the poverty level onto the exchange is that Wisconsin's leading the way and kicking people off of Medicaid. What I really hear them saying is that they dislike Obamacare just as much as the rest of us.
And I alluded to this earlier. What they said was revenue at the Potawatomi Casino is down $5 million. What I heard was they still made $363 million from people losing money gambling. Next on Sunday Insight, our panel picks the winners and losers of the week. First, though, here's your morning news update. Well, it's time for our panel to pick the winners and losers of the week. Michael Holt, you're first.
Everybody says that they have the perfect mother, but you're all losers because you didn't have my mom. My mother celebrates her 80th birthday this week, and for me, mom is an acronym for mentor, ordained minister, and mother. Happy birthday, Mom.
Jim, well, you can't top. That's very nice. Jim Ott.
Jeff, my loser this week, the League of Conservation voters for the ridiculous attacks on Senator Ron Johnson and his views on climate change. If this group is so sure man is causing global warming, maybe they should invest their $2 million in a wind factory or something instead of on hot air attack ads. My winner, Harley Davidson, their 110th anniversary party will bring lots of visitors to Milwaukee this week. Great for local businesses.
Bob Donovan.
My winners are all the people who attended Irish Fest last weekend and all the great folks who are attending Mexican Fiesta this weekend. Sadly, Jeff, my losers are the many good, decent, law-abiding citizens of Milwaukee who continue to live in the ever-increasing number of challenged neighborhoods this city is facing.
Joe Sanfilippo.
My winners are the 500 students that are going to get to leave a failing school and attend the school of their choice thanks to the statewide expansion of school choice included in this year's budget. My losers are the 1,900 other students who will be sitting on a waiting list, unfortunately, because that same budget contained a cap.
And for me this week, my loser is disgraced former FBI Chief Teresa Carlson, who's been named Acting Deputy Assistant Director of the FBI's Facility and Logistics Services Division. That's kind of like being appointed the King of Cudahy, except it's not as good. My winner is Ariana Huffington, who announced this week that comments on her popular website could no longer be made anonymously. Take that, trolls. Thanks a lot for joining us. Have an absolutely tremendous week.